Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons. Like diamonds, we are back again. We're going to be talking about moon phases, tides, trout, big trout. And I got my friend Scott Ray. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, guys?
So I'll read you his bio. You can edit this if you want, but it's on your bio inside of our insider community. It says bait casting reels expert, trophy trout chaser, and flounder lover. Fishing since birth, fish till I'm dead. Anything else to be added to that? That's pretty good.
And that sums it up, doesn't it? I love fishing. Those are my favorite species. And, one for the chase and one for the table, really. Love to eat the flounder and love to chase them big trout.
I love it. And you are in Texas?
Yes, Upper Texas coast. I fish mainly from East Matagorda to Sabine. I do venture outside those areas some, but it's a lot of coast to cover. So.
Yes, it is. Big state in Texas. Everything bigger in Texas. Well, I had you on, obviously, as the headline of the title says about tides. You've done some really cool videos inside of our community. If you guys don't know, Scott has been helping us as kind of a part-time coach, I guess is what we're calling it internally, and coming up with some really, really helpful stuff because let's face it, if you're in saltwater fishing, you need to know about the tides, not just not to get stuck, but it also plays an important role, and so do the moon phases, on the best bites and the best trophy fish bites. And I don't remember how many videos you've done now talking about, the moon and the tides and how it all plays together, but it's super, super helpful. And so I was like, man, we got to get you on the podcast and talk a little bit more about that, in particular, how it affects trout. But let's do the kind of the moons and tides 101. Do you mind kind of talking about that, like similar to the video that you did in the community?
Absolutely. So first thing we did is we went over all of the moon phase names. That way, when you hear we're in a waxing gibbous, you don't have to hit Google and try to figure out what the heck moon phase that is, right? So the gibbuses are the moon phases on either side of the full moon. So you have the full moon, and the 3 or 4 days before the full moon and 3 or 4 days after the full moon is known as the gibbous, okay? And so we have the opposite of the full moon, which is the new moon. It looks like no moon, the blacked out moon, right? And that is basically the crescents are on either side of that, right? And then we have the half moons, which are actually not called half moons. They're called quarter moons. And those are notorious for having very weak tides, known as neap tides. Okay. And the full moon and the new moon have what's known as spring tides. All right. Which, if you didn't know, the moon and the sun are pulling gravitational forces on the earth. All right. And when they're pulling in the same direction, we have what's called syzygy. And we've got new moon. That's basically a new moon and a full moon. All right. And those are the strongest tides because you've got the sun and the moon pulling on the, together, right?
All right. How do you spell syzygy?
It's got like 10 Y's in there. SYGYZYGY. I don't even know. Syzygy. Yeah. So basically when 3 celestial beings are in a row, it's known as syzygy. And we had a partial syzygy just recently in January of like 7 planets. And this was a very big deal in the astronomy, right? Is a big deal. But for us, it really didn't affect our tides, mainly because they're so far away from the Earth. But the sun and the moon basically control 90-something% of tides. You almost can rule out the other tidal constituents because they're just almost insignificant, and that depends on your ocean basin as well. Okay, so you look at the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, so the Gulf of Mexico is a fairly small ocean basin. All right, and then you take the Atlantic over there on the east coast of Florida. That's a very large ocean basin. Okay. So picture we have a huge platform. Okay. And let's say that's the earth and the tides and all this, the platform that we're going to set our stuff on. I have a cup of water. All right. I set a coffee cup of water on this platform that's moving. And you have, I'm the Gulf of Mexico, my little cup of water, and you have a one of them kids' swimming pools full of water, right? That's the Atlantic, okay. And we set those both on that same platform, and it's doing its thing. Then you measure wave height, or what would be tide height, in the cup of water, and it's what, a couple of inches, right? And this is the same motion. Now we're putting the same force into this. That's Coriolis effect and all this other stuff we may not have time to cover today. But that larger ocean basin, which we're using an example of the swimming pool, is you measure the wave height or the tide height on it, and it's going to be way. And get my hands in the camera. Going to be way higher, right?
Yep.
That essentially, broken down in a layman's terms, is why the east coast of Florida has such drastic tides, or really even worse is in the Carolinas. Those guys have super tides, man. And that's because your ocean basin is so large and you're so far from a amphidromic point, which again, we may not be able to get into that. Gulf of Mexico, little cup, and big swimming pool is the Atlantic. And so, of course, the waves are larger, which tides in the Atlantic, right? And so,
and I assume you're saying the body of water formerly known as the Gulf of Mexico, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so we don't want to get in trouble here.
Yeah. So my fault on that. Oh, and I love the name too. I can't believe I said Gulf of Mexico. So the Gulf of America. Let's go back and edit all that. Gulf of America, right? Yeah, so that essentially is why you've got 6 and 8 foot tides, or however huge their tides are in the Carolinas, and in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Gulf of America, you've got 1.5, 3 foot tides, whatever, right?
Yep. How did you learn? Did you just decide one day I'm going to go geek out on moon phases and tides? This is still have a couple words. I still don't know what they mean.
Yes, I did. So I go down rabbit holes, and fishing is my big passion, and so most of the rabbit holes are fishing related. This was one of them. I mean, it's so easy to just grab a tide chart, and it's like, there's the tide. But I want to know why. I want to know what is causing that. I want to know why the tides are shifting from 2 to 4 tides. Why why is the tide so strong on a new moon and so strong? Like I just curiosity killed the cat, man. So I got in there and dove down that rabbit hole and ended up coming out on the other side with some knowledge. So
why is that? Why talk to me like I'm a complete newbie? Why do some areas have 2 high tides and 2 low tides in a day versus some that don't?
So that would be diurnal and semi-diurnal. So essentially, we'll get it real easy. So when the sun and moon are in a line, when we have syzygy again, both of those tidal bulges are overlapping. Okay, so the 4 tides become 2 tides, right? During that time. And then when we come out of that, then we're going back to 4 tides. And that's why sometimes you'll see those little half tides will be, a good tide, and then this little bump at the top of it or at the bottom of it, right? That is those tides. They were lining up, and now they're starting to come apart from each other. I don't know if that helped with the hand graphic there, but yeah. So the tidal bulges are separating or conjoining.
Cool. All right. So that's kind of the 101 on tides and moons. Now let's bring it into trout fishing in particular. I assume you were curious because, like a lot of us anglers, we want to know the best time to go fishing and the best tide and time of day and all that. And obviously, we have some tools and smart fishing spots with our strike score for the best day. And a lot of it is, not all of it, but a lot of it is based on moon phases, and even brings in barometric pressure and a lot of the other things. And then we have the daily feeding level projections, or I guess they're now hourly, where it's showing every hour based on a lot of the same variables. So did you start fishing and documenting, hey, man, I had one of my most epic trout days here, and then it was a bad trout day? Have you been documenting this stuff and kind of trying to make sense of it all?
Absolutely. And there's a couple of folks that are doing something pretty big on that. There's Chris Bush over here in Texas is doing with the Speckled Truth. He is recording data, and I can only do myself and my buddies or stuff like that. People have access to. So he has this trout citation program where everybody that catches a trophy trout will send in all the details, right? The moon phase, the tide, the time of day, the lure, basic area, if they want to give that away, pretty much, all the details that could narrow that down where you could build a database, right? And he's done an amazing job of it. If you guys haven't checked that out, go check out the Speckled Truth. He's got some data some of it is extremely eye-opening, most of the trophy trout are caught during a gibbous moon, new moon, or full moon. And there's so much good data there. But yes, definitely trying to, that's kind of the point of it, right? We want to know when the best time to fish is. So full moons are great, but the problem with the full moons is I'm getting old now, and fishing at night is tough. I need me a nap, right? But the full moons are so good at producing trophy fish because that trout didn't live 14, 15 years or whatever it is, and get 30 inches by being stupid and making mistakes, right? And so they're very, very cautious of when they feed and how they feed. Most of them do a nighttime feed. So chasing trophy trout is it's a young man's game. Either you're waking up real early or you're doing a night trip or whatever. But yeah, the trophy trout definitely love those gibbous moons and full moons, and they like to feed at night. And during the new moon is when you'll get a lot more feeding during the day. And of course, in summertime, it'll be the sunrise. And of course, in the wintertime, you're looking at more sunsetish. But let's jump into this real quick. So you've talked about those on the Smart Fishing Spots app, where we've got throughout the day the little green bars showing the feeding. A lot of that has to do with the solunar, which is essentially how the sun and moon are lining up as the Earth rotates inside it. Okay, and so basically, we'll give a quick little rundown on the terminology. So the major feeding periods, which you've seen in all your tide charts and all of this, you see that it's like a major period, minor period. What the heck are those, right? So the major feeding periods are when the moon is directly overhead of us, so straight up in the sky, or below our feet, which would be the overhead or underfoot. Okay. So below our feet, meaning it's on the other side of the earth, but directly below our feet. And the minor feeding periods are when the sun or the moon rises, when the moon is rising and when the moon is setting. Okay. So when those line up, when you can start getting a major feeding period lining up with a sunrise during the summer, or something like a major or minor feeding period, whatever, that lines up with a sunset in the winter, or midday, honestly, in the winter, because we're trying to get them when they're warm. So yeah, your solunar is actually feeding periods, and it's very accurate. So you'll see a lot of guides that are very serious, especially the trophy trout guides, not the let's catch a limit of everything guides. The trophy trout guides are very serious about the solunar. And it matters a lot more in areas that have low tidal coefficients all the time. Okay. So in Texas, I don't know about Florida or rest of the coast, but in Texas, like Baffin Bay, for example, great trophy trout spot. But man, you got to have wind to even move water. That place is so non-tidal. That
what is the tidal swing in a given day? Is it inches? Oh
man, a few inches. It's not much. Okay, it's like it's almost unnoticeable, right? Wow. Some days, especially on the quarter moons, which is we just kind of covered as the weaker tides. But yeah, that's the solunar matters a lot when you have a lot less current movement, right? The trout love that current flow. Again, in the Carolinas, those guys got a lot of current flow. When that water's moving super fast, the solunar may not matter as much. The barometric pressure may not matter as much, because it's just overpowering. But the solunar matters a ton when you've got wintertime, or when you've got those areas that are not very tidal.
Cool. All right. So let's go back to where we were with that. So you mentioned Chris Bush, and he's been finding that certain moon phases are better for catching the trophy trout.
Yes.
What about just to go out there and catch a bunch of trout? Because, you see in the community, you have people of all different levels. You got some who are super experienced and they're trying to catch their PB or a new record. And some men just want to go out there and put their family on a bunch of fish. What would you say to that?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm that way too. If I'm going to go on a solo trip, man, I don't care if I catch nothing. I'm going to go chase that one big PB. If I got family with me or something, it's all about the numbers. So yeah, I think that first of all, trophy trout are almost an entire species in their own with how much obviously it's the same genetics, the same species. But what I'm trying to say is that their behavior differs from other trout. Their feeding habits differ from other trout. Their refuge, the areas they choose to hide in the refuge is different than other trout. So the whole patterning is different. They love deep water. Next to shallow water, they love the grass flats, things like that. But if you're going to go out and you're going to really try to get on a bunch of fish for the family or whatever, it's all about the numbers that day. I would definitely start looking at more fast moving water than I would the solunar. A lot of times those trout, especially when they're growing, the juvenile trout they feed all the time. Whenever you've got bait and, it's easy for them to feed, then they'll feed. They're opportunistic, they're going to feed anytime they can because they need it. They're trying to grow. They're also cold-blooded. Obviously, that's more pronounced in the summer, right? When their metabolism and their energy levels are higher, and less in the winter, obviously. But yeah, I think the trophy trout are loners. They're going to be off by themselves. They're going to be in a whole different part of the bay than the schoolies are, definitely. And that's common knowledge from us trout fishermen. But
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that is a misconception, and I've seen it, both in our community, our insider community, and even on Facebook, where if someone's like, "Oh yeah, I found all the trout. I couldn't get any of the 25, 27 inchers." Like they're probably not in there with a bunch of little 16 inchers. They're, to your point, they're usually. And I'm glad you used that analogy. They're almost like a different species, even though they're not. You hunt them completely different than you would, going and finding a massive school of 4 or maybe even 12 to 14, 15 inch trout.
Yes, absolutely. And a little bit of that changes about 40% of the time during the spawn, then you will find them around. I mean, obviously, the big female has to meet up with the males to get the spawn done, but it's not very long. They're out there and they spawn, and then they go lay the eggs, and then they come back and they spawn again. And they go lay the eggs and they come back. And so it's a very short amount of time that they're actually around the males. And typically that's in the surf. So I think the surf in the spring and summer time is the highest percentage chance that you'll catch a big one next to a small one, right? Other than that, they're not anywhere near usually. So that's something that a lot of people don't get. They're wondering why they don't catch the big ones. If you're chasing big ones, man, and you caught 3 or 4 small ones, move.
Yep. And so, let's talk about that. Let's talk about types of spots. What are some of the most popular? I'm not talking about GPS spots, but types of spots, flats, surf, to go just catch a ton of fish. What do you tell people if they've got the family out? Like, man, I want to catch a ton of fish. What kind of area should I be looking for?
Definitely mouths of passes, inlets, things like this, areas that you've got some fast moving water, deep water next to shallow water. In winter patterns, you're looking deep off in the bays. For us, that would be north, right? Because we've got a horizontal coastline, right? So it'd be north for us. And, north in the bays in the winter and in the surf in the summer. Right. But always the same thing, though. It's always going to be fast moving water, deep next to shallow. That spot might be 15 miles north in the bay or right there at the surf inlet. And that's, 2 different, but you're looking for almost the same type of stuff. Right. So
Yeah, it's the same in Florida. We've done a couple of videos on it, but I will repeat it because it needs to be repeated. In the summertime in particular, but in Florida, it always feels like it's summer, with the exception of a couple cold weekends. But we will be looking for areas that have moving water. So we're going to be close to an inlet, channel pass, something like that. And that also is near some sort of channel that also has a flat next to it. Grass flat doesn't really matter, but you got deep water that's close to a lot of moving water to either the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America or the Atlantic. And then you've got an area where it goes deep to shallow pretty quickly. And all we'll do, instead of trying to figure it out where they are, we will troll up and down that edge. And we'll go super slow and we'll just troll a slam shady on a 1/4 ounce jig head, and you'll find the fish. Like, they will hit, and then you slow down and you can circle back around with your trolling motor or drift it if you're in a pontoon boat. I mean, it's almost too easy once you kind of have done that a couple times. You're like, all right, I know they're going to be right here along this essentially a ledge, right where the flat meets that channel. And once you find them, it is so much fun. And I know when we had Wyatt on board, he was doing the same thing in Texas. When Pat went and traveled from Texas to Virginia, he's like, man, it was kind of the same thing. I literally followed that same pattern, and it worked everywhere.
Yep, absolutely. So trout behavior doesn't change, right? Their location changes. The trout on the East Coast, they're looking for the same thing the trout in the Gulf are looking for. They're dealing with a different habitat, but they're still wanting the same thing, right? So yeah, you're talking about that ledge and that drop off. That's something that a lot of people don't understand is trout don't want to travel they don't want to travel distances. They only want to travel in water columns. Okay, so they don't like to swim a long ways. When they need shallow water, they just want to go up shallow. Hopefully, it's like 10 yards away. That would be ideal, right? And then the deep ledge, and then the moving water with the depth, the pass or the whatever it is, the channel.
And just bringing in bait for them, and it's like a conveyor belt of bait and oxygenated water in the summer. Yeah, it's got everything they need.
Everything they need. Exactly. So one of the ways that I really like to target those trout in that fast moving water is drifting a lure. Okay. And so you're either taking a mirror lure, not the Mirrodines or Mirrodines or whatever you want to call them, but the old school mirror lures, kind of like I got some of them behind me. The heavy sinking ones, 52s, TTs, things like this. And you cast it out. And if you guys ever heard of Eddie Kabler is master of this. He's over in Florida with y'all. But I know Eddie, and him and I do the same thing. We cast at a 45 degrees in that current and manage your line. And that's it. You don't work that lure. The current works the lure for you. And trout love that. That's unbelievable how many folks will pass up fish because they're overworking their lure in fast moving current. Now, if there's no current, then to make the lure move, you've got to move it, right? Yep. But let the current do the job for you. We drift a lot of lures like that. We'll throw a 3/8 ounce jig on and fish a mud minnow like that. I say the mud minnow, the new colored mud minnow, right? Flame shady, whatever color it is on a 2.0 or mulligan, regardless.
Yep.
Or any paddle tail, it doesn't matter. We fish a lot of curly tails as well. But vibration blade, the Hogan R, anything like that with some substance to it, some weight, and just let it drift. And the trout love it. Go check out Eddie Kabler, man. That guy catches monsters all the time without working a lure.
Yep.
So,
and when you say line management, you're just saying to keep it taut enough where you could feel the strike, where you're not just letting your line fly all over the place.
Yes. So there's a lot to that, more than just making sure that you're close enough to feel it, which is, it's the same thing you do when you got too much wind, right? This one is current though. So what you're really trying to do is it's a weird way to talk about this, but I'm casting at a 45. Get back up so y'all can see me. So I'm casting at a 45 and I'm letting it drift across. And as it's going, I don't want to work the lure or pull the lure, but I almost want to kind of maintain my line and jump rope my line, so that current doesn't drag my line and put a bow in it, just like the wind will do. And what it'll do is it'll pull the lure to you, right? And you're not down. You have to get down in the very middle. And this is on every pass is the same. The trout are going to be at the deepest spot in the middle. And if you miss that deep spot in the middle, you're not going to get them. So casting accuracy and line management is everything. Don't turn that reel handle. I used to fish at Rollover Pass a lot, the legendary Rollover Pass, probably the greatest trophy trout spot in all of America. It is closed now. Anyways, that's another topic for another day. But yeah, I would have a lot of people come fish with me, and I'm trying to teach them how to catch these trophy trout. And they show up because, I mean, there's 20 trophy trout caught that day there. It's like, everybody comes. Nobody can catch them because they insist on reeling that reel. And if you pull that line 1 foot, it moved your lure about 5 feet. Now you're not in the middle anymore. And now you're not hitting that one little concentrated area where all of those fish are. So casting accuracy, first of all, finding the fish. Finding the fish is everything. But once you get into scenarios like that, a lot of times casting accuracy and what you're doing matters so much more than the lure, than color, than any of that. It's your presentation. And so a lot of people don't get that until they're very advanced, which that needs to be the first lesson you learn, right? It's not about the color or what you're, that type of stuff. It's find those fish and work that lure correctly, right? So, yeah.
And even the same with live bait. I don't know if you went through the Peter Deeks course on the underwater bait forensics. Did you ever see any of that? It was fascinating. So what he did, if you guys haven't seen it, you need to Google underwater bait forensics and get that course. It was even full-time guides were watching it. They're like, I had never even thought about this. And so he rigged every type of live bait you can imagine, from obviously starting with the basics like shrimp and mullet and pinfish, and just the list went on and on and on. And he rigged them nose, top of the head, tail, in all different types of scenarios, current, no current, etc., just to see how they looked underwater. So he had an underwater videographer film all of this, and it was eye-opening. Many of the ways that some well-known guides had always said to rig it, they're even like, dude, I've been doing it wrong. Now, there's, sometimes you got a shrimp, they're going to hit anything, but then other times to catch the trophy fish, they see something's off, and you can see it immediately underwater. Like that fish is like, nope, that doesn't look right. It's shrimp shouldn't do that in current. I'm gonna avoid it. And who knows how many fish we've all missed because of things like that. Like you said, you could be in the best spot, and if they're down here at this water level and your lure or bait or whatever is up here, or if it just doesn't look right, if it looks unnatural, you are not going to catch those fish, or you're definitely not going to catch the big ones. You might get a small juvenile to come smack it, but you're going to miss out on some of the best fish.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of that. So, it's harder on you guys. I think that the clear water is a double-edged sword. Man, that's great. Us on the upper Texas coast, we chase the clear water until it gets too clear, and then it's too much, right? Then it's hard. We have such muddy water. I think it's almost easier to fool the big ones here, to be honest with you. They get committed by the time they can tell that it don't look right. They're already mouth open and right there, And so I think hunting with that, our dirty water forces them to hunt more with their lateral line. And I think that when they're more focused on the lateral line than vision, than actual sight, then you can get away with more mistakes on presentation. Now, water column is not a mistake you can get away with. If you're not near the fish, they won't commit to it, right? But things like the scent, things like color, stuff like that might matter a little less for us because we're fishing in the chocolate milk, and you guys, it's like air clear over there, right? Like the fish can see you 50 yards away. Man, the fish can't see me right here, so it makes it lots easier for us, I think. And, I'd like to do more. I haven't got to fish in Florida much. I did a little Alabama, which is clear water too, but I'd really like to venture into other fisheries and do some more research on that, doing the same presentations and the same stuff that we do on the upper Texas coast, which, by the way, is the dirtiest water in the Gulf of America. Probably the dirtiest water in America, coastal water. And seriously, and it's just really, really dirty, and it causes our fishery to be different. Like it's so dirty, we don't have seagrass. There's no seagrass. Yep. it's extremely muddy. We've got more oysters, probably got more oysters in East Bay than all of Florida. Like, exaggeration.
Yeah.
But there's so much oysters and no seagrass. And you guys have an abundance of seagrass, and all, you're searching for those oysters, not that you don't have them, but nothing like we have.
Yeah.
Like, anytime the tide's low, all of Galveston Bay is oysters, like all of it.
Yep.
It's nothing but oysters and some small spots that don't have oysters.
Yeah, and you can see it on Smart Fishing Spots on the app when you turn the oyster layer on some of those areas, and in that Galveston, you're like, whoa, yeah.
The whole bay is an oyster.
Yep.
Yes, it is. That's another thing is, the layers on the Smart Fishing Spots, man. There is 6 or 7 layers that I absolutely love. The shaded relief is wonderful. I've found some holes that I did not know about.
That's a really cool.
Yeah, and the 1 foot contours are great too, but I really, really dig that shaded relief. If y'all didn't know, maybe we can throw something up there for y'all, but shaded relief shows the underwater contours in like a color contrasting.
Yep. And
man, I love it. I use it all the time. I use it in my weekend game plans. And we just went live with that temps, right? So the temperature layer, yeah, man. So you can see water temps, you can see depth, you can see, my goodness, weather. This thing's got it all. So it's definitely the best fishing tool I've got.
Yeah, that was the number one request we had last year when we asked all the members, all right, how do we make this thing even better? And over, it was like, well, it'd be cool to have water temperature. And so it took a long time to get all that. And if you haven't seen it, it looks just like contour lines, not as tight because we don't have every foot or a half foot in some cases, but it's really, really good. So even inside of bays and small areas, you have the water temperature, and it's not updated every hour. We are getting it daily though. And we're going to try to make it even better, but it's quite accurate. And it's an average of, the overall depth. Obviously we don't have someone sitting there with, a thermometer down at every single foot of water everywhere. But it is pretty cool. So
we're getting the data from the buoys, right?
Yep.
From the buoys that already have all that on it. Yeah. Yep. Okay. And so I mean, that's as accurate as anywhere in the world is going to get. Everyone's going to use the same buoys. So if you click on, that website everybody likes to use that owns the buoys. I mean, that's the same temps. So yeah, it's as accurate as you're going to get. Yeah. I love it. I'm really happy with the new water temps layer, and maybe that salinity will be next.
That would be cool. That would be cool. All right. So let's kind of wrap it up in terms of the original.
Okay. Kind
of title. So if you could only pick one moonface tide, however you want to describe it, for, let's just say trophy trout first, what would you pick if you had a full month to decide from for your hall pass and say, I want to target trophy trout? What type of day would you pick?
Wax and gibbous.
Okay.
Wax and gibbous. 2 or 3 days, 1 to 3 days before the full moon.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of trophies caught during that time. They know the full moon is coming, and they're antsy for it, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of them caught during a wax and gibbous and during the full moon. The problem with the full moon, I kind of hinted at it earlier, is you got to fish at night, and I'm just so old. That sleep schedule is for real. It's got control of me. So, but yeah, definitely the wax and gibbous, man. You still have very strong tides. That's why, nobody likes to fish the quarter moons, because these don't have no tidal movement. But yeah, you've got great tides. You've got some light that can help extend your twilight period. Okay. So, if you're fishing, whether it's summer or winter or whatever, you're trying to fish a sunrise or a sunset, right? You kind of have that extended, twilight period. Maybe, you got an extra 30 minutes or an hour, you can fish top waters, stuff like that. So, I really, really like the wax and gibbous the most. And then my number 2 would probably be the waning gibbous or the new moon. The new moon is great, and fish it during the day. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it was just coincidence or in our head or what, but for the longest time, we always thought the day after a full moon was the worst. In our minds, we're like, man, they've just been eating all night. They had all the light in the world. They've been in the last couple of days, and it's just everything's lit up. And it was almost like that next day after a full moon. Every time we fished, we were on the struggle bus.
Yeah. Well, they definitely start to transitioning, and that's kind of what I didn't mean to cut you off if you were.
No, yeah. No, I was going to say, do you agree with that or have seen similar or no?
Yeah, no, I agree with that a little bit. What happens is, when I say a little bit, is everybody knows that the trout or whatever fish are feeding at night, right? During the full moon. I mean, that's, you get the moon overhead major and at, midnight, 1 o'clock, and like they're feeding good. So the problem is everybody tries to hit that morning. They just fill their bellies up at 1 a.m. and maybe even tired from chasing bait all night. And, they try to hit the sunrise that next morning. It's going to be the sunset of that next morning, or night again. Right. And so, there's a lot of truth to that. It just, it's not that they don't feed on a waning gibbous. So that would be a waning gibbous. It's not that they don't feed on a waning gibbous. It's that everybody thinks there's one day of a full moon and everything tapers into it, right? So the day before go outside and look. The day before the full moon, you can't tell the difference between that day and the full moon day.
Yep.
It's percent. It's like 30%. It's like 2% difference of how much moon illumination they do it in a percentage, right? So it'll be 99% the day before and 98% or the day after, and then it's 100% the day of, and so you've got 3 or 4 days of full moon pattern. Right. So everybody thinks you fish at night and then the next morning. And so it's kind of more of our mentality than it is the fish behavior. But there's a lot of truth to that. So, yeah.
No, I'm glad you said that. And another thing you pointed out, I hate to miss it, was the word lunatic. Talk about that in terms of why we're still talking about full moons.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting stuff. So the word lunatic actually comes from, lunar as the root word of basically moon stuff, right? It's about how the moon affects our behavior. What is the human body? 95, 98% water, whatever it is. Yes, the moon definitely affects us. The sun affects us too. There is circadian rhythms. There's a lot of stuff that has to do with the sun, but the moon affects us. And anybody I don't even have to tell this to a bunch of folks that work in the medical field or in prisons or anything like this. If you work security, anything, you don't even want to work a full moon. Because it's going to be crazy that day, right? The lunatics will be out. It definitely affects us. It affects our behavior. It affects our mentality. And it affects every animal. It affects deer. It affects birds. It affects, fish. Obviously, that was kind of the whole topic. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it definitely does some things to us, man. And look at police reports. There's a spike on full moons. It's just wild that it really does affect us that much. And there's a bunch of lore behind it and all this, fantastic stuff that's, werewolves and, whatever. Right. But there is a lot of truth in a lot of that, guys, not werewolves, but how it affects us. Right. Yeah. I delivered it real well in the video, and I rambled on this time, but
no, that was great. I love it. And it is true. My wife, we were actually lived in Houston, and she was working at Memorial Hermann there, where they bring all the wild stuff.
Yeah.
And she was like, it's going to be the worst night ever. And it always was, with just more craziness than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's wild. So I have some family members that are in the medical field. I used to do security, and yeah, man, if you work in any of those fields, there is real data showing that people are crazier on a full moon. So
I love it.
If it's affecting us, man, it's affecting all of the wildlife. Look at the Farmer's Almanac. The Farmer's Almanac, it affects plants. It affects our crops. So it has a huge influence on almost everything on Earth. So
cool. All right. So if you were gonna pick a day just to go get a ton of trout or flounder or whatever, what would you pick?
Or I like the new moon for sure. Okay. Yeah, the new moon. We're still gonna have strong tides. flounder are more of a daytime fish as well. It's kind of why you can gig them at night. They they operate a lot with sight. And, again, it's the same purpose of why you could walk right up on them and stab them at night, because they're kind of dormant at night a little bit. I won't say that it's impossible to catch one on a rod and reel at night, but I have personally bounced a gulp off of one's head all for hours one night just trying, and he just wouldn't do it. And then sun came up and we caught like 30 flounder that day.
That's crazy.
So I would say the new moon for flounder and trout numbers. Definitely. Flounder are fun fish. That's a whole nother topic for another podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to have you back on and do that. All right. Final question. This is a bonus question.
Okay.
Why do Texas saltwater anglers hate spinning reels?
Oh, well, that's a quick, easy one, man. Bait casters are better. No, it's a cultural thing. We talked about this on the last Q&A. It's definitely a cultural thing. It has a little bit of geographical influence as well. I don't have a problem fishing 20-pound braid and 20-pound leaders all day, and I'm not going to deter any strikes. You guys, y'all go above 10-pound, and those fish see that line from a mile away, and they're like, nope, not going to happen today. So y'all are kind of forced to go super light line. And I believe that has a lot to do, like, man, you have to be high skilled to get away with 10-pound braid on a bait caster.
Oh, otherwise it's bird nest every cast. Yeah. No.
Yeah, you're going to struggle. It's diminishing returns past a certain point. And there's experts that can do it. I can do it. I know a lot of guys that can do it, that can get away with the real light line. But I think that there are pros and cons to each one. Accuracy, I think working a lure has more precision, casting precision. There's a lot of things that bait casters are better at. Power to weight ratio. I have a 6.8 ounce combo. The whole thing weighs 6.8 ounces. And I can just winch in huge redfish.
Yeah.
I don't think they even make a spinning reel, just the reel, that's less than 6.8 ounces. They do, I'm sure. But
there's only a couple though, and they're crazy expensive. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just the lightest spinning reels are nowhere near a lightweight bait caster. Same with the rods. I mean, you've got the big eyes. And so there's a lot of pros and cons to each one. You got to fish light line and light lures, and there's wind in your face. That spinning reel is going to beat you all day.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of regional stuff, man. Plus, bait casters are better.
I love it. Had to end it on that note, huh?
Absolutely.
Well, cool. Well, Scott, this is super helpful. This is a great one. We'll have to have you back on. And for you insider members, know that you've got access to Scott there and I don't know, 8 or 9 now, no, maybe 10 other, kind of regional coaches that are in the community now doing the smart fishing game plans every week and talking about trends and posting unfished reports. So, make sure to get in that community. We're giving away, I don't know, $1,500 of just free stuff every month just for being active in the community. A lot of really cool things. And now we have these chapters. I'm actually heading to one. Tonight we have 450 people RSVP'd to this big one tonight in Tampa. It's the Tampa chapter was one of the OG chapters.
Yeah.
Tampa and Sarasota were, and they've got access to a big building, the Shriners building, and once a year they kind of just give it to us as long as we pay for some cops for parking. I mean, you got 450 trucks showing up in cars, and it's gonna be crazy.
Order.
Yeah. They have obviously food and drinks there. So it's gonna be fun times. All that's happening there in the community. And if you're not a member, come and join us. Just go to saltstrong.com. You can see a link to join us in the Insider Club. And where else could they find you, or you do social media stuff?
Yeah, man, I really don't. I don't have a YouTube channel. I don't do any of that. I'm fairly big in the Galveston fishing community. I know most of the folks in the Galveston area are gonna recognize me. But no, I really don't hit the social media that much. I probably should. Looking at starting up a guide business pretty soon. It's gonna be something a little different as well. We're not just going to go put people on fish and put limits in the boat and then go home real quick. You're going to get, basically it's going to be a fishing school, just like you guys' purpose, except I'm doing it personally, right? I'm going to bring you out. We're going to show you how to work lures. We're going to show you whatever goal you have. Honestly, if you're a very beginner and you need to learn to cast, then we can do that. A lot of guides, what I see, one of the problems with the guide community is that it's all about just meat. We got our limit of trout. We got our limit of redfish or whatever it may be, and we're going done by 8:30. Like, what? No, I'm going to teach you to fish. You pay for a half a day. We're going to learn all half that day, right? We're going to learn from 6 till 12, and then my next group's going to learn from 1 till 6 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Love.
So a little bit different purpose. Hopefully that is popular. Hopefully that takes off because I guess there's some people that just want to go get some meat, but I know most folks are like, show me how to fish.
Yeah.
I like doing that. And another thing is if you go on a guide trip with me and I see you at my spot, no worries. We're good. I showed you that spot for a reason, right? So, but no, so the main place you can find me, back to the original, main place you can find me is in the Salt Strong community. And I will say, guys, that is the most valuable thing you get with joining Salt Strong. I know there's so many great perks. That Smart Fishing Spots app is revolutionary. We talked about that a lot today. Mm-hmm. Invaluable right there. That thing is worth its weight in gold. Doesn't weigh anything. But yeah, it's worth its weight in gold. And but honestly, man, the community, I personally love it. I love to help folks out. So I'm answering questions from guys from Florida, guys from North Carolina. I've got literally almost 1,000 DMs already from in Salt Strong. Guys, you got a question? I'll answer it. No problem. You want to know where I caught the fish yesterday? Boop, there's a pin. You guys go get them. So yeah, anytime you want to pick my brain, come join that Salt Strong community. Let me know. I got your back.
I love it, man. Yeah, you've been incredibly helpful, and I love the idea of the kind of guided fishing school. I do think that's something that's missing in our industry. Right. If you think of any other sport, and I'm calling fishing a sport or hobby, if some of you are against calling fishing a sport, but anything that you want to get great at, right? I got 3 young kids. They're all in different sports, and we hire a coach, right? We hire someone to coach them to get better. And that doesn't really exist in fishing. Meaning, because
there's fishing coaches.
Yeah, it's Salt Strong. I mean, we looked. You could not Google that term. There was nothing out there, and we're like, why is that? Like, why are we supposed to go figure it out by ourselves through trial and error when you have so many people that have so much knowledge and are willing to share like you are? And there are fishing guides that are helpful. Right. I mean, there's some that are helpful. And if they see you screwing up, they're going to, maybe coach you on a little bit. But in general, fishing guides, they're for entertainment, right? They're there for a family or a bachelor party, whatever it is, to put you on fish, regardless if it's for meat or not. It's really there. You're paying for entertainment to go out there for a fun day to catch fish, not for just purely education. And so I love it. We'll be able to refer you a lot of people because it's a big request we get. Hey, can we hire you guys, Joe and Luke, or one of your coaches? And it just hasn't been part of something that we want to do because it's not scalable for us right now where we are. But yeah, we'd love to have some outlets like you to be able to say, hey, man, hire Scott for the day or half day, and he'll change your world. So I love it.
Well, heck, I've been doing it kind of for free already. I'm taking everybody out and we're going fishing and having a good time. And most of them are beginners. I've got some folks that, hit me up that are advanced, but most of them are beginners. A lot of them are Salt Strong members. Yeah. We'll go out and wade for your first time, or we'll jump in the boat or whatever you want to do. So
I love it. Cool. All right, brother. Well, awesome job. Make sure to go check Scott out in the Insider Club. And once he has all that set up to hire him out too, we'll put all links in there as well. So we appreciate you, dude. This is a super helpful podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Like I said, y'all hit me up on Facebook or come see me in the Salt Strong community.
Cool. Appreciate y'all. And comment down below if you see this on YouTube or on our blog page. We'll make sure either Scott or myself see that comment. And otherwise, we'll talk to you on the next episode. Peace.
See you.
Want more fishing tips, shortcuts, and tools so you can catch more fish per trip? Then head over to saltstrong.com now and join the movement. Tight lines, and thanks for listening.